Swinging in to talk about their thoughts on lifetime appointments and judicial independence, we're joined by retired professor of law at Vanderbilt University, Suzanna Sherry, and editor-in-chief at the Cato Institute's Supreme Court Review, Tom Berry. Tom, let's start with you. A recent poll has shown that about 46% of Americans have faith that the Supreme Court operates in the best interests of the American people. That number is way down from 68% in 2019, and generally where it's been throughout history. So do you agree that there is an issue here at some point, Tom, with people's view of the Supreme Court? What do you think is driving that?
That's actually a tricky question because, of course, the Supreme Court and the judiciary were designed to be the non-political branch. So to some extent, we insulate them from elections for the purpose of allowing them to make unpopular decisions, decisions that might not be what the majority would vote for because they're supposed to rule based on the law, not based on policy. Nonetheless, even if they're making some unpopular decisions, it's still not great for democracy if people don't have faith in the judiciary as a whole. And I actually think some of the gamesmanship and randomness that's occurred because of lifetime appointments, things like not confirming a successor to Scalia until Trump was elected, things like quickly confirming Amy Coney Barrett at the end of Trump's terms, I think some of those have actually contributed to the notion that the Supreme Court has become politicized, or at least the appointment process has.
Yeah. Sure, what do you think?
I think I agree that it has become politicized and that some of the gamesmanship is why the court is losing popularity or is losing respect. But I think it's also the behavior of the justices themselves. Many of them have become politicized. They have an ideology and they have a desire for particular results, and they are open publicly about what those results are. They've become celebrities who speak to their fan base, and then that leaks into their opinions, and people think that they are just legislators in robes.
And that's on both sides of the aisle, I take it, right, Ms. Sherry?
On both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's stick with you a second, Ms. Sherry. There's been a lot of proposals for a term limit of sorts, where not a renewal or anything, but just a limit of 18 years. And the idea is that give every president a chance to appoint a few people. What do you think about the term limit issue?
Well, I don't think that it would solve the current problems of the politicization. It might even make it worse because presidents might use their opportunity to appoint the most extreme justices that they could find. The justices might make the most extreme decisions that they could, but it would create a new problem, which is what are justices going to do after they retire? They're probably going to want to work for a law firm or a university or think tank. And how are they going to vote in the last few years? Is their vote going to be influenced by what they want to do later? I think that's a problem.
So that's a great point I hadn't really thought about, and that is, will they skew their vote because, hey, they're only 70 years old, they've got to retire because their 18 years are up, and maybe they want to go make some money? Interesting. Mr. Berry, what do you think?
Well, one thing to point out is that if we went to 18-year terms rather than life, I think the age at appointment would change. Right now, presidents are heavily incentivized to appoint younger and younger. Clarence Thomas was appointed in his early 40s. Most now are appointed under 55 so that they can serve as long as possible given life tenure. If we went to 18-year terms, presidents wouldn't feel that pressure anymore. It doesn't matter if they're 55, 60, even 65. They're likely to survive for 18 more years. And so I think actually a beneficial aspect of that would mean you might see more 60-year-olds appointed, and then they're really at the age of retirement by the time they get to 18 years. If you look at the whole history of the Supreme Court from its start to about the 1970s, 18 years was just about the average time that they voluntarily chose to be on that before retiring. So I don't think it's an unreasonable amount of time to expect them to serve.
Interesting. That's a good argument the other way. Now, going forward, is there any way to kind of take the politics out of this process at all, Mr. Berry, and maybe do some things that might make it less of political and politically based appointments?
Well, I think To one extent, you would lower the temperature of every single nomination if you had 18-year term limits, because then you would have regular guaranteed appointments every 2 years. So you would have less of a notion of the fate of the republic or the balance of the court hinges on one single nomination, the way we thought about it with both the Kavanaugh and the Barrett nominations. So you would know, okay, even if one party's going to get 2 in this election, the other party can win the next election and get 2 going the other way. So I would prefer having a court where each individual nomination is a real debate about judicial philosophy, but no single one is likely to tip the court for a generation.
Professor Sherry, your thoughts?
I think that's wrong. If you look at it historically, there was a historical study that showed that since 1937, if 18-year term limits had been in place, 60% of the nominations would have changed the ideological composition of the court. And going forward, almost 3/4 of nominations likely would occur when the president and the Senate were held by different parties. I think it would also mean that the Supreme Court would be an issue in every election rather than just in some elections.
So would it be constitutional to have the 18-year term limit, Professor?
No, I think it would take a constitutional amendment to change that.
Mr. Berry?
Constitutional amendment is certainly the safest way to do it. There is a proposal to looking only prospectively. So to be clear, not cutting short the terms of any justices already appointed, but change the rules prospectively so you serve 18 years on the Supreme Court and then life on a federal appellate court. There is at least an argument that would conform to the Constitution's requirement that judges serve for good behavior, meaning on the judiciary for life.
So, Professor, what do you think about that?
I don't think it would work because justices are confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. They are not confirmed as a federal judge. And so I think that they would have to stay on the Supreme Court.
So what about the proposal for changing, which I've heard from some folks about, changing the number of votes needed in the Senate to up to 2/3 to get an appointment through to the Supreme Court? What do you think about that, Professor?
I think that would help. I think that would help because it would require compromise. Between senators of both parties and the president, and I think we would end up with less extremist justices, more centrist justices.
Mr. Berry, your take.
I'd be concerned that not only would justices be centrist, but they wouldn't really have a coherent judicial philosophy. Right now, we have an interesting debates on the courts. We have justices admitting that they're originalist at the time that they're nominated, or admitting that they're pluralist or non-originalist. I'd rather have a mix of Kavanaugh's, Gorsuch's versus Barrett's and Kagan's than 9 justices who refuse to sort of admit to any specific judicial philosophy in order to get confirmed.
Well, isn't that the case sometimes anyways? They say they don't have a judicial philosophy, Professor?
Sometimes they say that, but I think it's important to note that there's a difference between judicial philosophy, and I agree with Thomas that it is a good thing to have people with different judicial philosophies on the court. But there's a difference between that and ideology. Ideology is about results, and the court many of the justices on both sides of the aisle are now more about results than they are about methodology.
Okay, Mr. Berry, you have the last take here. What's your thoughts? An 18-year term limit, a good thing or bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. 49 out of 50 states have either term limits or age limits for their state Supreme Courts. Rhode Island is the only one that does it like the federal system. So I think that's an indication that the federal system is an outlier and certainly made sense in the 1780s, but with longer lifespans, it's just sort of becoming anachronistic at this point.
All right, well, thank you both for a very robust discussion, and I think our viewers got a good education for both of you. Thank you very much.